Have you ever looked at someone who just rolls with the punches and wondered, how do they do that? Well, it's not magic and it's not just luck. It's a skill, a kind of mental superpower that's working away behind the scenes. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that very power, cognitive flexibility.
You know that feeling, right? When your day goes completely off the rails and you just can't shake that feeling of frustration. Or maybe you get caught in a loop, playing the same negative thought over and over again in your head. That feeling of being mentally gridlocked, that's the exact opposite of what we're talking about today.
So it turns out there's a name for the solution to getting unstuck, and it's a skill you can actually build. The best way to think about it is like the operating system for your brain, the software that lets you pivot, adapt, and run smoothly no matter what kind of curveballs life decides to throw your way.
So what is it really? Well, the scientific definition is pretty straightforward. It's your brain's ability to switch gears, to adapt your thinking when you're hit with something new or totally unexpected. It's all about changing your mental game plan on the fly.
And this is way deeper than just saying you're open-minded. Cognitive flexibility is a core piece of your brain's executive functions. Think of that as the C-suite in your head, the part that's in charge of planning, problem-solving, and keeping everything in check.
So how does this mental superpower actually work? Well, researchers have broken it down into 3 key moves. First up is inhibiting. That's your ability to hit the brakes on those automatic knee-jerk reactions. Then there's updating, which is all about refreshing the info you're working with in the moment. And finally, shifting, which is, you guessed it, smoothly moving your focus from one thing to another. It's this constant, fluid dance between these 3 pillars that makes it all happen.
Okay, so now that we know what it is, let's get into why it matters so much. And we're going to start with our inner world, because how you adapt your thoughts doesn't just help you solve problems out there, it literally shapes how you feel about yourself in here.
And look, the difference is night and day. On one side, you have mental rigidity. This is linked to rumination, getting stuck on that negative thought treadmill, which often leads to low and shaky self-esteem. But on the other side, mental flexibility. That's connected to better emotional control, higher self-esteem, and a really clear, stable sense of who you are. The contrast couldn't be clearer.
Now, here's where things get really fascinating. Study after study shows this really strong, positive connection between mindfulness, the practice of just being aware of the present moment, and having higher self-esteem. So we know these 2 things are linked.
But how, right? How does being more mindful actually make you feel better about yourself? What's the secret ingredient? What is the missing link in that chain?
And boom, here it is. The research points to 2 critical go-betweens. The first one is our star player, cognitive flexibility. It helps you bust out of those negative thought loops. The second is something called self-concept clarity, which is just a fancy way of saying you have a clear and stable idea of who you are. These 2 are the bridge that explains exactly how mindfulness builds a stronger sense of self.
All right, so that's the inner game, but this mental superpower has a massive impact on our outer lives too. How we deal with other people and navigate this messy, unpredictable world we live in. I mean, a flexible mind is directly tied to some incredible real-world skills. We're talking about things like having more patience, higher cognitive empathy, which is that ability to truly see things from someone else's perspective, and a much better ability to handle uncertainty. In fact, that link to patience is so strong, one study found that cognitive flexibility was the single best predictor of it. I mean, just think for a second about how much better our daily lives would be with a little more patience, right? With our families, our coworkers, everyone.
And what about all those times when life doesn't come with a clear instruction manual, when things are messy and uncertain? Well, that's when a tolerance for ambiguity becomes your best friend, and cognitive flexibility is the engine that powers it.
And the best news of all, we can train this skill. This chart here shows a study where they compared different ways to help people get better at handling ambiguity. And as you can see, while a standard approach like positive CBT worked pretty well, the group that practiced mindfulness-based therapy, they saw an even bigger jump.
Okay, so we've covered the what and the why. Now let's get to the most important part, the how. How do we get more of this stuff? The fantastic news is that your mind really is like a muscle, and cognitive flexibility is a skill you can absolutely train up.
So what's the most effective workout for this mental muscle? Well, across all the research, one answer comes up again and again and again: mindfulness.
This isn't just some wellness buzzword. It is a powerful, targeted way to train your brain.
And we're not talking about something vague. There are specific, structured, and clinically proven ways to do this. You're looking at things like mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, or MBCT, mindfulness-based compassion therapy, and acceptance and commitment therapy, also known as ACT.
So what do all these methods have in common? They help you switch off your brain's automatic pilot. They train you to take a step back from your default thought patterns and see them for what they are, just mental events, not absolute truths. And that creates the space you need to see new options and respond with way more flexibility.
So let's bring this all home. We've seen that cognitive flexibility isn't just some nice little skill to have. It's a foundational pillar for our mental health, impacting everything from our inner world to our outer world.
To really hammer this point home, I want to leave you with one final, very powerful number from the research: 56%.
So what is 56%? That is the amount of the difference in people's self-esteem that can be explained by just those three factors we talked about working together: mindfulness, cognitive flexibility, and a clear sense of self. That is a huge piece of the pie. It shows just how vital and interconnected these skills really are.
And the researchers behind this finding left us with this really interesting, almost paradoxical question to think about. They ask, maybe the path to a strong, authentic sense of self isn't about building up a story, but about letting go of our rigid narratives about who we are and just being present instead.
So, there you have it. You've just met your mind's hidden superpower. The only question left is, how are you going to start training it?